Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langling, your host, and I am so glad that you are deciding to spend just a small part of your day with myself today and my special guest. My guest today, he and his wife, Beth, they bring love, joy, and peace to people through bubbles. Yeah, bubbles. That's the mantra of husband and wife team John and Beth Reider, who took the bubble business by storm 20 years ago. They also go by the nicknames Bubble Man and Bubble Lady, which I just love that. Their love of bubbles led to a full blown mobile event business called the Bubble Bus, which has franchises in 3 states. And today, Atomic Bubbles has its very own bubble factory in Shrewsbury, Missouri, and a wildly popular line of pet bubbles called Puppy Love and Kitty Love. They actively support nonprofits benefiting both pets and people. John Ryder, my guest today, the Bubble Man. Oh, welcome to Let Fear Bounce.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim. I can tell we're going to have a good time. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Okay, now says here over 20 years ago, you took the bubble business by storm. Now, you and your wife purchased a existing bubble factory, bubble store. How did that start?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So we're going back 2 decades here. So I had found on the internet. That's when the internet was just kind of like everybody was going out there and figuring out this internet thing and all the cool things it could bring into your world. And I had found a gentleman who had invented these bubbles called techno bubbles, and they were glowing blacklight bubbles. So these were bubbles that glowed under blacklight, and they almost sounded too good to be true. So I ordered some and they arrived, and Beth and I got our blacklight out. And I can remember the day very vividly. We were in the kitchen and turned on the blacklight, started blowing these bubbles. And I tell you what, these bubbles glowed and they were beautiful. And it was like one of those aha moments for me. It's like, and that's kind of what launched us. I mean, long story short, we bought that gentleman out. We bought his patents, formulas, and we became the face of techno bubbles. And that's how we got into this crazy business through these bubbles that glowed under blacklight.
I think it's awesome. No, I mean, but just sitting there thinking, because I'm thinking, did I ever have those when I was younger? And I don't remember, but you're just thinking how magical that would be if you're in a dark room and you have all these glowing bubbles floating around in the air. What a magical scene that would be.
You know what? It really is. Anybody who's experienced it. And when we first, so there was a 20-year patent on these things. So for 20 years, we were the only people that could legally make them in the US and Canada. Um, and we sold them to all the haunted houses. That was a big thing, using them because they get their black lights out. But yeah, and that was part of the trouble with that product. It's like not a lot of people were putting together, hey, they thought they were glow in the dark bubbles. So everybody would buy them. And it's like, oh, I didn't know I needed a black light. And so we had a little bit of an uphill battle there, but we found some really good success in the haunted house industry, the amusement park industry, backyard parties, and high school and college dances and raves. That was
Oh,
our
yeah,
thing.
that would be fun. And then you morphed into or included pet bubbles.
Yes, yes.
So, and I'm assuming that has to be a whole different formulation for pets,
It
for dogs and cats. What made you think, we should make some that are pet safe?
that's another interesting deal. So in between techno bubbles and pet bubbles, we'd actually found that advertising the bubbles, we had to go out and like show these blacklight bubbles. So we quickly found that people were asking us to do bubble events and not really wanting to buy our, but we were out demonstrating these at parties and things. And so we formed an event business in between all of this madness called Bubble Bus. So we would go out and do bubble parties. And then during COVID, to get to the pet bubble part of the story, is we during COVID, when everybody was trying to figure out what they were going to do for their living and life and everything. A neighbor friend of ours who's a pet lover, we were sitting around at a party and said, "Hey, I think if you came up with a bubble for dogs and cats, John, maybe something fun to try. I mean, everybody's got dogs and cats now. Everybody is home, with their pets and their family, and so I started doing research the next day, figured, saying, hey, who was already making them? Was there any competition out there? Were they, were bubbles good, bad? I bought every bubble that I could find online that had anything to do with pet, and I bought them all and found out that most of them were really low quality. They were made overseas, and that combination made them made a good opening for us because we were a U.S. company and we had a very high quality bubble. So we reformulated things to make them totally safe for pets. And then we thought, well, let's put some added enticement in. So we have bubbles that are scented with, they smell like smoky bacon, they smell like peanut butter, birthday cake, pumpkin, and apple pie. So
I didn't even
um,
know you could make bubbles smell.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I learned a lot. It was a super fun project, and we threw them out there on the internet and put them on Amazon. And the next thing we know, they started selling, and started slow, but now we've got a pretty loyal following, and a lot of people have kind of realized we have a very high quality, safe bubble, and they're ordering, which is happiness in our world.
Yeah, and that's what you want. I think
Yes,
it's awesome. And I'm a new grandma. So as soon as I saw bubbles, I was like, oh, I can't wait for summertime, to
yes,
be outside blowing bubbles and watch them blow around on the wind. And then
right.
I saw pet bubbles. So I'm going, what?
Yeah, this is our season now, and we found that the pet industry right now is a good place to be. A lot of people are madly in love with their pets
Oh,
and treat
absolutely.
I mean they're part of the family and treated as such, and so they want to provide for them and have fun, and our bubbles not only as being fun. We found that people are sending us emails and saying, hey, my dog's running more now than he ever has. My cat, my older cat that used to just lay on the couch all day now is actually moving and grooving and getting interactive with these bubbles. So we had no idea that, kind of health and wellness was going to come into this bubble that we had created for fun.
Heck yeah. Joy, health, and wellness. How can it get better than that? I'm telling you. Well, because it does. And as one who does move, I'm not a sedentary person, never have been. Heck, I can't wait to blow bubbles and chase them around the yard with my granddaughter.
Oh man.
I
Yeah.
just can't. And then the dog will be following right behind us. So it's a family thing. Go chase some bubbles, folks.
Right, right.
I'm telling you, it's so awesome. I'm just so excited. I'm giddy. I feel giddy right now because I want to get
Um,
some of your bubbles now. Well, I will be getting some of your bubbles because I want to play with them with my granddaughter and my dog. So
yes.
you've got have you ever considered or have you ever written about this journey of yours? Because
Oh my,
your background was not bubbles.
my
Your
background was
background
not.
was a bit techie.
It was, yes, it
So
was, it
share a
was.
little bit about your background prior to bubbles.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I went to school. My father paid a lot of money for tuition for me to become an aircraft engineer. So my education is in aircraft engineering, to make things fly. Then I got into the high tech electronics business, and we did alarm systems and some things. And I shared with you before we hopped on the cast here that I worked a lot with the veterans and disabled folks and folks in wheelchairs, high level quadriplegic with technology. So yeah, my experience in life has been almost from one extreme to the other. I went from some pretty techie and some serious stuff when working with vets to blowing bubbles. But I think the interesting thing is that all of those life experiences have kind of formed who I am today, as everything you've done in your life and your listeners. So just when you think that you're on the path of what you think you're going to do for the rest of your life, maybe things change, maybe you have to change, right? So being able to adapt to that, but also know that all of those things that you've done prior are not for naught. You can use that experience, you can use that knowledge. I use a knowledge of a catering business I used to work for when I was a young dude, and like in my bubble event business, it was a lot like that. It was scheduling, organizing. I was serving bubbles instead of food, but all of that experience that I learned in catering so helped me in my like in my bubble event business. But they're kind of totally different.
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of.
So yeah, so it's fascinating. Yeah, I started doing one thing, thought it was going to be my life, and it changed up several times along the way.
So were the bubbles when you first bought those ones that glow in the dark with the black light, was that just
Yeah.
on a whim? You just saw them and you're like, that looks kind of fun. Let's buy some and see. Was that a whim, or had you been thinking, I think I need to transition out of what I'm doing now. I feel like my heart's calling me somewhere else.
You know, that bubbles crossed my path was a whim. It just kind of fell in. I was feeling like what I was doing in the aircraft business there was not for me. I was behind a desk all the day. I was kind of pushing paper, and I was an engineer. So that was to me, um, um, that wasn't as I wasn't getting as much fulfillment out of that job as I wanted. When I saw this bubble thing come, it was like, wow, this is so great. I mean, it truly inspired me that this guy had invented this. And then when I saw him, it's like I truly thought I had the next pet rock. I really did. I thought I was gonna buy. Beth and I thought we were gonna buy this bubble company and stuff. And in a year we were going to be millionaires, and then life was good. We were done, and it didn't quite happen. It didn't quite happen that way.
So
Um,
along that journey, because you're kind of alluding that maybe it was a little bumpy, were there any little were there times where you're like, oh man, what did we get ourselves into? Or were there any little fears like, you know what, I don't think we're going to be able to make this work?
I would say absolutely. I had those moments. Yeah, and even yeah. First off, we had taken a second mortgage on our house to kind of buy this
Oh,
gentleman's business. So I mean, we had a pretty significant financial risks there, and when it didn't pan out to be that next pet rock, I mean, I was like, what have I done? What have I done? Have I just blown something really big here.
right.
And so, but again, I think I mean, it takes a lot of hard work. We did not give up. So that's when the sales weren't taking off, but then that's when that bubble event business kind of entered into our world. We weren't making bubbles selling that product, but people loved the fact that we were out there blowing bubbles and making this cool party atmosphere, and that was selling. The phone started ringing, so it's like, okay, we're in the bubble event business
Yeah.
now.
And I'd never
And
even heard of bubble event business.
yeah. I think we, at least in the Midwest, I think we invent. I mean, I don't think anybody was doing. Everyone for the first many years of doing what we were doing with Bubble Bus looked at me and myself and Beth like we were crazy. Like, why are you blowing bubbles? For a living. You've kind of put some of your other business in life and education on hold to do this thing with bubbles. I mean, people looked at us like we were nuts. And but
And
we
have you found, I have found, at least in my experience, when you do a big pivot and you're finally doing something that you want to do, that you're enjoying, and your heart's calling you to do it, others will point and question. And I
yes.
think, give me your perception of this, but in my perception, it's like they're thinking, gosh, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think you hit it right. I think you hit it on the head. I truly do. I think people love to judge.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that myself. You look at someone, and we're quick to judgment. All of us are. But I think the root of a lot of people making that is we had a lot of people come up to us and say, "Wow, I bet you really love your job," or "I wish I could be doing what you're doing." You know, so that kind of validated, like our pivot. But at the same time, they always saw us out when we were ready for action, and we were,
Right.
everyone was smiling and having fun, and people were laughing. They didn't see the times when we were trying to make payroll, or during pandemic we couldn't get raw materials to make bubbles with. So I think it's all, you kind of have to look at things in perspective.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think people looked at us and thought we were crazy on one hand, but then thought, maybe crazy good.
Right. But because fear, I am positive, holds so many back from doing what their heart calls them to do.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they let society judge or guide. And
Hmm.
we've all done that. I
Right.
did it. I was in the corporate world because, well, you grow up, get married, have kids, get a job.
Right.
Done.
Hmm.
But then, along the way, you're like, life happens. Sometimes it's a big thing that's happening, and all of a sudden you're looking at your life going, what am I doing?
Right.
And you realize, am I even happy?
Yeah.
Or am I even content?
Hmm.
That's a question I ask folks every once in a while. I'm like, how happy are you?
Hmm.
And people always hesitate, and it's a hard question for them to answer. And I
Yeah.
find that so sad,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So,
gosh, you went where your heart went. And looking at your path, how it all went, and I'm sure you can do the same, you can see how that was laid out for you,
right.
because to me, the big guy's up there doing his thing.
Right.
And I look back and I might not have enjoyed my journey, parts of it.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it might have been damn hard, you know, uh,
Right.
bring you to your knees hard.
Right.
But then you can look back in hindsight and say, okay, that's why I'm doing this right now.
Right.
So what's it? Have you had a bump or, that gave you one of those epiphany moments where you're like, okay, thank you. Thank you for guiding me in this direction.
Yeah. You mentioned two things, and yes, I have had those moments. I think fear is this evil monster that's out there that affects all of us, whether we want to admit it or not, even if you're the strongest or think you're the strongest person in the world. Fear is that, man, I tell you what, that will make you doubt, that will make you not trust,
Yeah.
that'll make you make bad decisions based upon fear. And even this morning, I looked at numbers and just kind of the sales right now in our company, and we're off to a little bit of a slower start than I would like, and even the fear. I mean, I've got all this success and all these beautiful people in my life, including my wife Beth, who you mentioned, at the very beginning. I mean, we're doing this beautiful thing, and yet that fear is still there. I mean, you have to keep it at bay.
Yeah.
Um, and, and I think the epiphany moments, I think you said something with putting you on your knees hard. We all have those. I've certainly had several moments, more than several moments in my life, and you wonder, you know, God, why this? Why now? What's going on? Then I think, the evil one gets in there and says, turn against this God of yours. If he was God, why is he doing it to you? And you have to keep that at bay. But then when I always come out of those moments, I call them my little dips. I battle with a little bit of depression in my life. So when I get out of one of those little dips, I look back and I say, man, I know exactly why you put me there, God.
Yeah.
You needed to teach me something. I needed to be open to it.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing is being open when you're down to what's the learning there.
You worded that perfect. That's one of the hardest things is being open, especially when you're down.
Mm,
Good. That's a cool way of putting it. You
hmm.
mentioned that you deal with depression on occasion. I live with PTSD, and depression and anxiety come right along with that. And
Hmm.
I always, you call it a dip. I'm always like, yeah, I'm on my waves now.
Hmm.
I'm on a good wave. Oh, waves dropping. That's how I picture it in my brain. So yeah, I can resonate with a little bit of what you were talking about there. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners can too, because life is not easy and it's never been promised that it's going to be easy.
Right. Right.
And if you haven't went through something that brings you to your knees, you more than likely will at some point in your life. That's not to be a Debbie Downer. That's just being rational and realistic.
Right.
Because how are we
Right.
going to learn?
Right. Right.
To be grateful for what we have And this is something I do. I try to do each day. Three things. Um, just three things that I'm grateful for. And sometimes my brain or my spirit just might not be into it, but I'll be like, okay, I'm grateful for this first cup of coffee. I am grateful for my dog. I am grateful that I have a roof over my head. Because those are things that we take for granted.
Right.
So I try to do that each day. I don't succeed, but I try. Do you have something like that, that when you're in those down moments, like a little tool in your tool belt or your toolbox that you can pull out, and that's what helps just kind of skip you over that little bump?
I think gratitude is, as you said, I think gratitude is a real easy one if you think about it. All of us can be so grateful for many things. As you said, I mean, when I wake up, I mean, if I just think, I've got an amazing wife, I have great kids, I have a house, I have a roof over my head, and I've got a good meal on the table tonight. I'm not in the street. I'm not,
Right.
I have so much. And uh, and if we all think about that, you can get off your pity pot pretty quick, man. If you look at all of the blessings you have, and yet we stay in that quagmire of being down, being fearful. Fearful will keep you in that spot, man. It'll grind you. It'll grind you
Oh,
down,
I know.
But I think gratitude, being grateful, what you said, I think if you just think, everybody can think of three things they're grateful for.
Right.
And it's like,
And I
wow.
mean, it's not hard. And there are
Yeah.
a lot of people struggling. So please, anyone out there listening, don't think I'm like downplaying any struggles that anyone might be going
Yes.
through. It's
Right.
especially in the struggles that you need to find something grateful for, because right there, therein lies your nuggets of hope
Right. Right.
or your bubbles of hope. We're going to go with bubbles of hope today because we got the bubble man on. But I mean, seriously, it's life can be so hard. And it is very hard for many, many people around the world. We know that. All you have to do is look, watch the news. That's all you
Yeah.
have to do. And then that's enough to bring you down, you know?
Right.
But in your own small slice of the world, like you're giving joy to me. Bubbles are nothing but joy. You're giving joy to all the people, every bubble that goes out. Oh, this is so fun. My brain's going. My brain's going. I give out nuggets of hope, which I shared to you prior, before we went live on here. And I've shared that on many, many of these episodes. So I have little nuggets of hope, and he's got his bubbles of hope. I mean, it's like I always say, I'm just a pebble tosser. I'm tossing it out there, and we're just, tossing it into the lake of life and causing ripples. I can't change the world, nor can you, but
Right.
we can certainly change our small slice of it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
one nugget of hope at a time and one bubble of hope at a time. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. I just absolutely love what you and your wife do, and that you saw that that's something, and you've been doing it for a long time. Did you say 20 years now?
20 plus years. Yeah. Yeah.
20 plus years. So what is in store next? Do you have anything on the horizon?
Well, we're always looking for that add to our line. So we went to a big pet show in Orlando a couple weeks ago, and we launched a lavender calming bubble. So we've developed a bubble that's infused with real lavender essential oil, and it has the same calming effects as anything with real lavender in it will have. So we've actually put those into our puppy love bubbles, and we call them our bubble love calming bubbles, and they're infused with real lavender. So we're we're looking at more things along those lines for health and wellness. Really, it's like, I think we've done a great job with creating some amazing bubbles for fun and activity. And now I'm challenging myself to put kind of a different spin on it. It's like, okay, what else can we do with bubbles
Right.
while keeping them fun? But are there any attributes or side things we can put in it, like the smell of lavender?
Yeah. Well, extra benefits.
Yeah, as Gene in our company says, we're bubbles with benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I was going to say that, but it sounded kind of strange. So I'm glad you said it first.
Yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's actually hilarious, but
That is funny.
anything with bubbles, our brains are always just kind of going a million miles an hour with.
Oh
So
yeah, but what fun. I mean, to have those kind of brainstorming sessions, I find those so fun because you
yeah,
never know what's going to come out.
yeah, no,
You
no.
might come out with the next pet rock, you never know.
Well, Case, it was like my dear friend Susan, we were at that party. We were just sitting around, having a glass of wine and talking during pandemic. And she happened to say, John, you know, have you ever thought about pet bubbles? I never had that idea before Susan mentioned it to me, but I remembered it. And when I went to bed, something told me, you got to check that out, man. There's something there. It's kind of one of those light bulb moments. And well, I think there's something too where is if you have an idea and do you let that fear get in the way and say, oh, there's no way, right? There's no way that's going to go. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. I mean, how many products do we use every day that you look at and you say, I wish I would have invented that?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a wacky product, but
Well, you think about it, everything that we use, someone invented and someone probably thought they were crazy for doing it. So, if we're all lumped in, there's the creative folks, the ones that think way outside the box, and we're
right.
all considered crazy. Hey, call me crazy. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Amen. Exactly. So,
We were
I
made the
think,
way we were for a reason,
right, right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah. And I think that's that nugget of hope that you were talking about. It's like, don't let that fear get in your way. And just because somebody says you're nuts or you're crazy or that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, if you feel in your heart, right? If you feel in your heart that that's something you should be doing, um, it's okay to go after that. It's okay to go after that dream. Monitor though, make sure that, I mean, if you've given it a good run and it's not working, then, move on to, like me and my
Right.
glow bubbles. It's like the glow bubbles didn't make me a millionaire, but we found out the spinoff on that was the event business that helped finance us to get us to the point where now we're in the manufacturing business. So it's that journey. It certainly didn't start with a great idea that panned out exactly the way we wanted to. It was nothing like that.
Oh, and I think anything worthwhile, I think it's probably pretty rare that something works out perfectly the first time.
Yes.
I mean, look
Yes.
at, the amazing athletes or musicians and any type of artist and
Mm,
that overnight success. I think that is such a silly, trite phrase, overnight success, because
yeah.
if you actually look at any of that, those people were working their tails off for years and years and years to become an overnight success, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think it's the same with your bubbles, and I was asked at one point when I decided to do this and write full time, um, I was asked, well, how are you going to pay your bills? Can you even make money doing that?
Mm,
It wasn't, wow, good for you. Holy cow, you're following your heart. Oh my gosh, good luck. It was, can you even make money doing that? Are you going to be able to pay your bills?
right.
And I'm thinking, nope, not today. Not letting that, it's a bouncing.
Yeah.
People want to project their fears onto you, and I
Yeah.
choose to let them bounce because I just I look at myself. I'm like, I'm armored up each day.
Right.
And the D man, which is what I call the devil, he sends out his little minions with their little bow and arrows, and I just
Yep.
can hear him all day going ting 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 off my armor. I'm letting them bounce,
Yeah.
because you can't let fear be the driving force of your life. You
That's
just
that's
can't, by golly. And with you, your bubbles, let them bounce. See, it all works.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
those D-man, the
that,
D-man and their little tiny arrows can't pierce your bubbles of joy, you know?
right.
How
Right.
awesome. Oh my
Right.
gosh, this has been such a fun conversation.
Oh,
I'm gonna have to have you back on.
oh.
Just simply because I want to. We can talk more
Well,
about bubbles. Maybe we can have some bubbles and blow bubbles at the same time.
yeah.
But I'd love to have you back on at some point, later on in the year, maybe early next year, see what's happening and how things are going. I just love the pet bubble thing and the
Oh,
lavender bubble, the health and wellness idea. How
right.
brilliant. What a brilliant idea. But
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you for being my guest, and please let all those listeners out there know where they can find you and all your good stuff.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, you can find us out there on the World Wide Web. You can go to atomicbubbles.com. That's atomicbubbles.com. We have an online e-store. You can go to Amazon and find us in Etsy and eBay. But yeah, if you just type in Pet Bubbles or Puppy Love Bubbles, and on any of those locations, we will be for sure. We will pop up very quickly, and yeah, we'd love for your listeners to try us and enjoy them.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
Now I ask all of my guests to please toss out a nugget of hope to the listeners, something maybe inspirational or motivational, something that they can tuck away and carry with them for the rest of the day. So, what would your nugget of hope be today?
Yeah, I think for today it's trust. It's trust that first of all is trusting God that He's there and always watching. Trust in the decisions that you have made to this point were well thought and well executed. And trust in, I guess, trust in the world, trust in the others around you. I mean, that's sometimes tough to do because, we have to live in a village, right? I mean, there's people all around us. And again, you don't have to look in the news too far to see all the bad stuff, but, trust in your fellow man or your fellow woman. I think it's worth the risk. And without that, I mean, I think you will continue to live in fear.
That is a beautiful nugget and a really good reminder. There are good people out there, folks.
Yeah.
So just quit watching TV. That's what I did.
Unplug it, man. Unplug it.
Yes, unplug it and blow some bubbles.
Yoo-hoo.
Sounds perfect to me.
Thank you,
Well,
sweetheart.
John, once again, thank you so much for being my guest today. This has been an absolute blessing and pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
And everybody out there, thank you for tuning in once again and spending your precious time with myself and my guests, because I do know that you are busy. I do know that your time is precious, and I do appreciate it. Everybody out there, this is Kim Langling, host of Let Fear Bounce. Be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed.
Kindness. It's simple, powerful, and free. Yet, it holds the extraordinary ability to change someone's day or even their life. Order your copy of Nuggets of Hope, Cultivate Kindness on Amazon.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. New episodes drop each week, folks, on YouTube and Spotify and most listening platforms. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all the things. So until next time, folks, take a deep breath, be kind to yourself, and as always, let fear bounce.